science history, unraveling the mystery that all started with a Big Bang.
Every night before going to bed, he would brush his teeth and make a preemptive attempt to void his bladder. He then walked into his closet, got on his knees in front of the shoe rack and prayed to a god whose unlikely existence he likened to an ongoing quantum event. In his mind, the act of kneeling mattered not at all to this supposed god. He could just as well pray standing naked on his head with his ass serving as a fleshy vase for a bouquet of flowers. The penitential pose was only useful as a demonstration of his humility in the face of the infinite, although when things were going his way, it was more of a feigned humility. The prayers themselves mostly consisted of thanking his subatomic almighty verb for assembling an infrastructure that allowed for life to exist. This included, in no particular order, the various laws of physics, gravity, organic chemistry and thermodynamics, and, since it was his belief that sentient life was created by an insentient universe in order for the insentient universe to be admired, he made an effort in his prayers to tell the insentients, nice work or way to go. Finally, he would close with a plea for this nameless everything to look after the less fortunate. Please God, despite the clear evidence that it's not in your nature to care, bring love and happiness to all the souls who suffer. Then, his heart filled with grace, he would climb into bed and sleep peacefully until he dreamed he was standing in his closet and peeing on his shoes, God's clever way of telling him he had to wake up and go to the bathroom. The boy who farted laughing gas, eschewed pretentious poses. He thought those who called him vulgar had boogers in their noses. Ralph Waldo Emerson. I have long believed that we as human beings are genetically inclined to elevate and worship those of us we deem to be very beautiful or very talented. We do this because we are somehow comforted by our adoration. It makes us feel good. As children, we sleep beneath the images of movie, TV, music and sports stars and dream about the mystery and grandeur of their lives. As adults, the posters come off the wall, only to be replaced by a steady, noxious stream of tabloid culture. But perhaps most enjoyable of all is watching the fall from grace. Nothing beats a good old public crucifixion, especially when it's self-inflicted. My theory for why this is considered entertainment is, again, a genetic one. DNA, even if it's mediocre, wants to ensure its own survival. The existence of superior DNA is viewed as a threat. When beautiful and talented people screw up, we can't help but feel that this somehow improves the chances for our mediocre descendants to eat meat. In other words, evolution my ass. When I started writing vanity cards, way back in 1995, few people noticed them. Most of those who did assumed they were some sort of legal boilerplate. Heck, even if someone got curious and hit pause on their VCR, there was no guarantee they'd be able to read the damn things. Now, forget about it. Every card gets paused and analyzed like it was a canticle for Leibowitz. Great book, check it out. The jokes are taken way too seriously and the stories all have to have a secret meaning. Sometimes a junkie monkey is just a junkie monkey. Don't get me wrong. There's a part of me that loves to exploit this silliness. What other possible reason would I have to write the following poem? He knew where the bodies were buried, 'cause they weren't buried deep. Always follow the money, silence don't come cheap. Okay, I'm just gonna say it out loud. There are times when going crazy looks attractive. And I'm not talking about becoming charmingly eccentric. I've already got that covered 9 ways to Sunday. No, I'm talking about purposely emigrating to the land of lunacy. That special psychological zip code where the ancient laws of behave yourself no longer apply. My reasoning is simple. It takes a great deal of effort to sustain a conservative, trustworthy persona. Surrendering that effort would involve, from a Freudian perspective, a conscious dismantling of the superego that part of the psyche entrusted with enforcing parental and socially approved actions. And therein lies the allure of going full frontal whack-a-doodle. The constant energy required to pass as normal would suddenly become available for doing and saying whatever pleases me in the moment. Imagine it. The id and libido completely unbound by any and all moral or cultural restrictions. Probably won't need the shrink anymore, might need a lawyer. Miscellaneous showbiz tips. Never forget that taking a bow and ducking are essentially the same thing. The reason you suffer is because you think your identity and worth as a human being are inextricably tied into your career. Don't think that. Success has many parents, and even more lawyers. They're paying you a lot because they're killing you. Don't grow too attached to your agent. Like a beloved spouse, they come and go. If you want fair, go to Pomona September 8th to the 26th. Wear comfy shoes. It's not true that if you believe the good reviews, you must also believe the bad ones. The bad ones could have been written by mean, stupid people who hate your success. Act like your job is the most important thing in the world, but never forget that it's ultimately meaningless. All we are is dust in the wind, yada yada yada. Was there an original thought to be Thunk? Or was he forever doomed to be an emulator? Or worse, a regurgitator? And if he was, so what? Doesn't every college sophomore majoring in English because they have no freaking clue what to do with their life know that disdaining the derivative is the height of unoriginality? More importantly, what was the likelihood that he could keep writing without landing on even one declarative sentence? And why did he use the idiot word thunk? Is he actually an idiot? Or is he wildly clever? Will we find out one day? Who knows? Who cares? Should he continue trying to write a vanity card when he has a raging flu and is so heavily intoxicated from a potpourri of over-the-counter cold medications that he keeps referring to himself in the third person? Probably not. On behalf of the producers of The Big Bang Theory, I want to take this opportunity to thank our intrepid office staffers, Jen D'Angelo, Anthony Robinson, Jess Ambrosetti, Garrett Orvinen, Tara Hernandez, Charlie Back, Robin Green for their tireless efforts and ridiculous devotion to the building of the Lego Death Star seen in tonight's episode. You are all now part of television history, although that will not be reflected in your paycheck. This photograph was my vanity card when I was working on Grace Under Fire and Sybil. I remember deciding on its composition by asking myself what were some of my favorite things. The answer, as you can see in the picture, was tobacco, bourbon and an old Mac computer. 18 years later, I still love my Mac. The other two items, despite my eternal affection, have been replaced with a branchial inhaler and a metal folding chair in a church basement. Among the team of superheroes, his power was the least envied. As the human sponge, he had the ability to absorb the emotions of people nearby and make them his own, to the point of actually forgetting that what he was feeling did not originate with him. While his fellow crime fighters fought evil by hurling bolts of lightning or with amazing displays of strength, the human sponge could only sit next to the villain of the day and soak up his festering rage. Needless to say, when the weary band of caped crusaders returned to their secret lair, Sponge was not very good company. There were even private discussions of replacing him with Paper Towel Man, who had the same superpower, but was disposable. Thankfully, the problem was solved when Jesus joined the team. From that day on, the human sponge was just a sweetie, except around moneylenders. Then he could be kind of a dick. He was under no illusion that his brain was doing anything other than providing him with illusion. Needless to say, this created a bit of a quandary. If your understanding of your environment is based on a funhouse mirror reflection of what's really going on, then every single thought has to be viewed with suspicion, which created yet another quandary paralysis by analysis. What, if any, is the appropriate action one takes in response to a constant flow of cerebral misinformation? Of course, there was always the option to move through the world with great certainty, pretending that his consciousness was hardwired into the absolute truth of existence. The obvious downside in that would be talking and behaving like a presidential candidate. After some time to inaccurately reflect, he devised a scientific solution that he hoped would ease not only his own suffering, but the suffering of all mankind. He called it apologetics, TM. The basis for his amazing breakthrough can be seen below in what millions of apologists around the world call the mea culpa triangle. The voice in his head never stopped for breath. It spoke of danger, it warned of death. It shouted, hurry, pack up and flee. And all before his morning pee. 100 episodes. Babies were born, people got married, people got divorced, people died, people were hired, fired, quit, homes were bought, expensive cars were leased, tears were shed, harsh words were spoken, fear, dread, resentment, jealousy, frustration and rage came and went like clouds in the sky. The only constant was laughter. We laughed a lot. We hope you did too. From everyone at The Big Bang Theory, thank you for watching. Oh, I almost forgot. Bill Prady went on a food delivery system, lost 20 pounds and started tucking in his shirt. The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. First draft. A young woman stepped forward from the throng and asked, "Oh great Prophet, tell us how we might find love that is unconditional, unwavering and unending." The Prophet did not answer right away. He looked off into the distance, gathering his thoughts. Silence descended upon the crowd. Then he turned his gaze upon the young woman and said, "Get a dog." Censored. I've long known that due to the ECC's equal time rules, I cannot use this space to espouse political views. To do so would set in motion a legal action which demands that an opposing opinion be flashed on the screen for a split second at the end of a sitcom, I'm guessing. With that in mind, I worked hard to write what I thought was a very balanced, centrist vanity card. A simple, rational essay that no one could disagree with. CBS disagreed. And now for the uncensored version. A pin that reads, "Vote Republican and be free to live your disgusting life." Interesting. With Valentine's Day around the corner, I thought it might be nice to write a vanity card about the human heart, the organ from whence love comes. While cardiologists might see it as just a simple pumping mechanism, common wisdom knows better. The brain does not love, the lungs do not love, the penis makes a lot of noise about love, but after intercourse its intentions are fairly obvious. In the end, we all know the truth. We've all experienced the truth. That swelling feeling in the chest is the universal sensation we have when the heart is expressing love. Conversely, that sinking feeling in the chest is the universal sensation we have when our love is not reciprocated. It is then that the heart is broken. We are literally heartsick until we learn that our former paramour was inexplicably taken hostage by Somali pirates while dining at a neighborhood pizzeria. News we find heartening. I do not interact with Facebook, Twitter, or any of the other social networking platforms. My reasoning is simple. Why in the world would I want to share my private thoughts and feelings with the world at large? What good could possibly come from me having a convenient outlet to express myself to millions of people? The more likely outcome is that in a misguided attempt to be funny or cute, I'd say something stupid and wind up getting publicly raked over the proverbial coals. Which is why I think the wiser path is to keep my opinions to myself. For example, if I were to feel moral outrage over an organization riddled with pedophiles expressing their moral outrage over contraception, I certainly wouldn't tweet about it. And the photographs I've taken of myself wearing nothing but oven mitts and a tiara will never be shared on a Facebook page. Zen War, Redux. The hardest journey is the one which leads to the truth. I didn't know that when I began my little midnight ramble. If I had, I probably would have stayed home, drank myself stupid and watched Ferguson until the big nod closed my book for the day. But there I was, standing outside her house, looking up at her bedroom window while a cold rain whipped me in the face like I'd somehow pissed it off. I could see her kissing him. I could see her as she slowly descended beneath the window frame. I could see him too. He just stood there smiling, like the canary who got eaten by the cat. But then a funny thing happened while I was dancing the voyeuristic bebop in my terribly trendy, bright green plastic shoes. I found myself thinking that the aching loneliness I was feeling had its roots in something much deeper than being 86 to a one-bedroom efficiency in the marina by a dame who digs deep into the degrading bang-bang in order to make up for an emotionally distant father. No, this was the pain of existential separateness. The false sense that one is fundamentally apart from people, things, life, the whole damn universe. In a blinding flash I realized that what I was really experiencing was the result of a lifelong indoctrination by a culture which elevates individualism above all else, thus causing a soul-crushing sense of aloneness which demands over and under-the-counter medication, the constant distraction of sporting events, TV, major motion pictures and a pop tabloid religion based on celebrity worship crucifixion. Of course this epiphany did not deter me from pulling the Roscoe out of my fanny pack and going into the house to IC. As I crossed up the stairs I could feel my wet tube socks squishing through the little round holes of my polyurethane Crocs. As my eyesight dims, I see things more clearly. As my hearing fades, the music becomes more beautiful. As my mind withers, the memories, hey, whatever happened to Alan Funt? His name always made me giggle. Country songs I hope to write someday but probably never will. The pink and green are making me blue. Last night I dreamed you came back, and I woke up screaming, Lord, make me the man my dog thinks I am. I love you, I'm stupid. If two of us are the same, one of us is unnecessary. My mama always told me to do what I love, so I joined the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco and Firearms. The problem with getting older is I can't remember which lie I told her. Your wife don't love me no more. I came to on you. A good excuse for bad behavior. The tattoo I regret. For me, the epiphany came in my second season on Roseanne. At 39 years old I finally woke up to the fact that the principles I was taught as a child, like fairness and justice, have no place in the world of power and money. The rules of the sandbox, strictly enforced by a wise and compassionate adult, are laughable when the sandbox is the television business and there are Mercedes and Bentleys parked alongside it. What's odd is that 20 years later, despite my belated awakening to the reality of amorality, the old schoolyard programming continues to insist on its rightness. Ideas like play nice, share your toys, no name calling, take turns and misbehaving gets punished, still resonate inside me as if they were some sort of fundamental truths. Of course, I now know that they are not. At best, they're ideals. Lofty goals to aspire to. The truisms of the real world are more along the lines of, My ball, my bat, my rules and money talks, walks. Which brings me to our impending presidential election. A classic showdown between the lessons we all learned as further children and, well, reality. Further complicating the situation is our collective, unconscious desire to be supervised by that wise and compassionate adult. But there is no such adult. The truth is, we are alone in the sandbox. The game we play, seemingly forever, is called Ideals versus Money and Bats. For what it's worth, I'm betting on the latter, but there's a little boy in me who insists on voting for the former. I like words. I like the way they sound. I like their subtle shades of meaning, their power, and most particularly, their ancient roots, their origins. For example, I recently became fascinated with the rather routine word miscellaneous. To begin with, it really sounds great. Miscellaneous. I dare you to say it out loud and not smile. Plus, you can just forget its meaning and have fun with it. Miscellaneous. Miss a lot. Then consider its long journey from the Latin missia, to mix, to its current form. How did missia become miscellaneous? Whose idea was it to drop the air and add the alaneous? And why? Were they drunk? Was it some sort of strange speech impediment that caught on with the general populace? Or more likely, did the French get hold of it and decide to do what they do best? Unnecessarily fancy it up. Makes you think, right? And speaking of the paths words take to arrive at their current form, how can anyone not be entranced by the rocky road travelled by the old Germanic word ficken, to move back and forth? Was it first used in carpentry? Grab the other end of this saw and we'll ficken it across this log. Or is it the Teutonic ancestor of fickle? First you say we should sack Rome, then you say we shouldn't. Boy, you are one ficken barbarian. Of course, it could very well be the root of another word that describes a back and forth motion, but if that were the case, this vanity card would probably be censored. He appeared normal. He spoke and behaved just like anyone else. The fact that he had no heart was very well concealed. Well, that's not entirely true. He did have one. It was just not in his possession at the moment. And this is where the story gets complicated. The woman who had the darn thing was blithely unaware of the fact. Well, that's not entirely true either. She knew that she'd left the relationship with more stuff than when she entered it. She just hadn't bothered to do a proper inventory. Had she done so, she would have found several other hearts, as well as a few sets of balls. Regardless, his dilemma remained the same. A woman had absconded with a vital organ and the gnawing emptiness he felt was a direct reflection of that vacancy. Well, that's not entirely true either. The gnawing thing had actually been with him since he was a child. He just liked to assign blame for the condition. This may sound silly, but I had to stifle tears when we wrote the last scene of tonight's episode. The same thing happened when we rehearsed it. And then again when it was performed in front of a studio audience. And yet again when we watched the final version in an editing bay. I don't know what it is, but there's something primal, something deeply human being expressed when these characters unconsciously hold hands while watching their friend embark on a monumental journey. Speaking of which, I want to take this opportunity to thank you for watching The Big Bang Theory, for being part of our journey. I hope you've laughed a lot and stifled a little. I hope you are holding someone's hand. See you next year.